My wife and I just loved each other, and I still love her and madly in love with her till this day. We were gonna head to Utah for an annual yearly meeting. We're driving down to Provo that night. This was September 26th. And we go to her parents' house. All of our family was there. My siblings were in town, and all of her siblings were in town as well. It was probably 9 p.m. I remember she said, "Man, I'm so tired. I'm like so beat right now." Came over and gave me a kiss. This is probably 10:30, 11 p.m. and went to bed. Woke up the next morning, and I woke up to her alarm clock. I nudged her, and as you become one in marriage and as you just know each other so well, there was just something about that feeling. Right away, I knew she was gone. And I know CPR, and so I started CPR. And at that point, my two boys, I looked behind me, and they were both, they had both come in the room, and they were seeing something that they should never see. And they were sobbing. About 7 minutes later, the paramedics came and they ushered me out, and they started their operation on her. And at that point, I got on my knees and I just prayed. 5 minutes later, the lead paramedic came out and he just said, "Hey, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but she's gone, and she's been gone for a while." At that point, then taking her out of the house, and then you're just left alone.
What do you say to people that are dealing with trauma and really tough things?
I think not if, but when it happens to people. I'm talking about trauma or traumatic events. I think there's hope, but it does get better, and it's the most cliche thing in the world, but I live minute to minute and I just keep going. I just have a feeling that there's going to be light at the end of this tunnel.
Kelly Bills, great to have you on the roller coaster.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming in.
Awesome to be here.
Flying in from Idaho all the way out. It's an honor to have you, man. I have a fun story that I want to share with you. So your younger brother, Craig, played football at Timpview, and I played football at Woods Cross, and we graduated the same year. And I have an adopted brother who's Polynesian named Willie Wolfgram. I don't know if you know this name.
Oh, the Wolfgram, yeah, the Wolfgram family.
He actually played at Timpview with Craig,
yeah.
I think his freshman or sophomore year. And I played free safety in high school. Craig played free safety in high school, and I thought I was a hot shot. And I remember we played Timpview in a summer, like 7-on-7 thing, but it was helmets and shoulder pads and shorts. And I remember Craig, for some reason, he went on offense, played a couple of downs of offense, and I remember him running up the middle. They did like this little pop pass, and he ran up the middle and he hit me and blasted me like 10 yards back. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's the truth. And my brother would always talk about Craig and how hard he hit. And so I went to a Timpview game. I can't recall if it was a playoff game or what, but I went to a game, and you could hear from the stands when he would hit somebody, it like made you cringe a little bit.
Yeah.
And that same game, third quarter, he hit a kid, and the kid was knocked out, totally knocked out, and like wasn't moving. And it was like a whole deal. And ambulance came onto the field, loaded him up, took him to the hospital. And I was like, okay, I thought I was like a hard hitting, cool safety, you know, this guy's the real deal. So I do have a little bit of connection to you through your brother.
That sounds like Craig, just a total menace and savage on the football field.
Yeah.
And then you get him off the field, and he's just super nice and very soft-spoken.
Yeah.
And then he just totally changed when he got on the field. So that sounds like Craig. Hopefully he didn't give you a concussion or anything.
I don't think so. It hurt.
Those are brutal.
It was fine.
That's funny.
I think that's probably the way your whole family is. Like I just get this vibe about the Bills that you guys are just like some pretty hard dudes, you know. But like not like soft on the inside, but like.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. We grew up fighting all the time, and we love each other. We have each other's back. We're so close. We're all so close today, but we grew up just competitive and fighting all the time and roughhousing all the time. And so I think you just kind of take that with you as you grow into adulthood. Yeah. And you got to learn how to like turn it on and off, because you can't walk around picking fights with everyone when you're 30 years old, you know? And so I'll never forget my wife. She came on a vacation with us. It was the first vacation that she came on with our family. And her family grew up like they didn't really play sports, and it was just very different than, you know, how our upbringing. And me and Craig got in a fight, and she was in the bathroom and she heard a bunch of commotion. And I'll never forget her just opening up the door and looking at me with just this totally like ghost face, like what just happened outside of this door? And me and Craig had gotten into a little scuffle, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, babe. I didn't know you were in there. And it was just, she probably had to really get used to that. But yeah, hilarious.
Dude, we could probably tell a lot of stories. I have 3 brothers myself. And so it was every day. Yep. Like, I don't know how my mom did it, but
the moms are saints. They're saints.
Thank you to our sponsors over at Bucked Up. I love this company. I love their products, their apparel, and their supplements. Recently, they dropped the mother of all pre-workouts, Mother Bucker. This is not for the faint of heart. This will make you want to claw your face off. So don't get stuck in traffic when you're headed to the gym. I love these guys. I love this company, and I love their products. They are clearly the best tasting pre-workout on the entire market, and they're #1 for a reason. Bucked Up is my favorite workout brand, hands down. And they also have my favorite apparel for working out and just for daily life. It's Lululemon-like quality, but for a fraction of the price that's affordable. So head over to their site, buckedup.com, where you can check it out. And for 20% off their entire site, use the code TylerHall20. We're going to dive right in to a story that's, I think, deeply personal and deeply meaningful to you in your life. I became aware of you because I'm friends with Jimmy Rex, and I saw you on his show, and I saw a clip of you talking about this, and it was tough, man. It was tough to watch, and it really resonated deeply with me because I went through a similar experience that my audience knows about. Why don't you share with us? I know you just crossed a year, September 27th of 2022, so it's been just over a year. Share with us the events of that day, and maybe even that week leading up, if you'd like.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you having me on. I love Jimmy for having me on. It was a good opportunity to share my story. My wife and I just loved each other, and I still love her and madly in love with her till this day. We had a great marriage, and it wasn't perfect by any means, but we had a great marriage. And I was in college football coaching for 14 years, and that's a very hard profession, and she just stuck by me through thick and thin, and she was just so loyal. She had a personality of she was just rock solid, just so loyal to me, stood by me, had my back in every instance. Towards the end of my football career, we just kind of felt, both of us, without really even talking about it, we just both felt like it was probably time to change professions. And so my little brother, Craig, he started recruiting me. He's in healthcare. He runs nursing homes out in California, and I flew out there, and we made the switch. And I go back to just that loyalty and that just confidence she had in our marriage. And I came home one day and I just said, hey, what do you think about switching careers? And she's like, I'm in, let's go. And that just made me feel so confident and just ready to roll. And so we spent the last year of her life in California, in Northern California, Pleasanton, and it was a beautiful time of life. We didn't have this, we still had stress in this new profession, but it was a different kind of stress than we were used to. I had a lot more time with her and my boys. Beautiful time. We would go explore on the weekends, and we would just love on each other every single day. It was just a beautiful time of life. And we were going to head to Utah for an annual yearly meeting through our company. And we were so excited. They were going to have a little a gala or whatever at the end of the meeting. And so we were going shopping for her dress that she was going to wear. And we were supposed to wear, tuxedos. And it was just a fun time. And so we're getting ready to go, and we fly into Salt Lake. The meeting was going to be at the Grand America in Salt Lake. And so we head down to Provo, and her parents live in Provo. And so we're driving down and just had some amazing conversations. I remember specifically those conversations on the way down to Provo that night. This was September 26th. One of them was, she asked me, she said, "Hey babe, do you remember our song?" And I said, "Of course I remember our song. That's our song. How could I forget?" And she put it on and we're just holding hands, and it was beautiful. And we go to her parents' house. We're hanging out. We're just enjoying life and getting ready for the next morning's events. And all of her, it was kind of cool because all of our family was there. My siblings were in town, and all of her siblings were in town as well. And so she went with her siblings and parents to go get some dinner, and then I took my boys out to dinner separately. And then we came back and we were having a great time. It was probably 9:00 p.m. And we go downstairs. I was going to present for the annual meeting the next day. And so I'm trying on different blazers for her. And I remember she said, I'm so tired. I'm like so beat right now. And we had woken up really early for the flight. And throughout our marriage, I don't think she missed a day of working out. She never worked out on Sundays, but I don't remember her missing a day of working out. And so she said, "Man, I'm so tired, but I need to get a workout in." And so she did some burpees and some abs and came over and gave me a kiss. This is probably 10:30, 11 p.m. and went to bed. And so it was me and it was our 3-year-old son, Jace, and then it was my wife in bed together. And then in the other room were my 2 other boys. And I laid down for a little bit, and then I went into the other room, and I looked over some notes for my presentation that I was going to make in the morning. Came in the back of the bedroom, probably about 1:00 a.m. Went to bed. Didn't notice anything different. It was just normal. Got my 3-year-old, cuddled with him, fell asleep, and had a great sleep. Woke up the next morning, and I woke up to her alarm clock going off on her phone. And so she was staunch. She was just disciplined. She was a very disciplined person, and she was a person that never hit snooze. And so I remember flipping her snooze button off because it kept going off. And then I was texting my brother, and I was texting him about plans that we were going to have for that day. And then it kind of dawned on me. I just kind of dawned on me that she wasn't getting up. And so I turned over, and her back was facing me. She was on her side, and I nudged her, and right away, I've explained this to other people, and it's very hard to articulate. But right away I knew she was gone. And I think as you become one in marriage and as you just know each other so well, there was just something about that feeling of touching my companion, and knowing that she was gone right away was a feeling that I don't wish upon anyone. I knew she was gone, and the best way that I can describe it is an electrical shock going through my entire body from head to toe. I just felt an absolute shock, and I got up. I panicked. My 3-year-old was still asleep. I'm sure I woke him up. I flipped her over on her back, and just the look on her face, she was absolutely gone. And my first instinct was to run upstairs. Her dad is a doctor. He's an orthopedic surgeon. So my first instinct was to run upstairs and to try to get help. So I ran upstairs, and then about halfway through, I realized, no, I got to go back. So I ran back. At that point, her mom heard me yelling, and she came down. And so we're both panic. And this is just an experience that I just relive every day. I'm sure it's obviously trauma that I go through every single day, but it's an experience that I relive every day. To just in my heart know that she was gone, but then still trying to revive her. I picked her up. We had 911 on the phone, and I know CPR, and so I started CPR. And at that point, my 2 boys, I looked behind me, and they were both they had both come in the room, and they were seeing something that they should never see, and they were sobbing. And so about 5-7 minutes later, the paramedics came, and they ushered me out, and they started their operation on her. And at that point, it is the most shocking, numb feeling that I've ever gone through. And I'm trying to get back in the room. They just said, "Hey, just let us do our thing." At that point, another paramedic came out and just said, "Hey, does she take anything? Does she take drugs? Does she take antidepressants? And I said, nothing. The only thing I've seen her take is Tylenol. And they're pumping her system full of everything. He just said, hey, we're unloading the kitchen sink on her. We're trying everything. And at that point, I got on my knees and I just prayed. And I had paramedics and officers surrounding me, and I just prayed right in front of them and just emptied my heart out to my Heavenly Father. And just the feeling of hopelessness. Honestly, Tyler, I've never gone through that feeling in my life. I've had a pretty good life up to that point, but that feeling of hopelessness and despair, it was overwhelming for me. And then about 5 minutes later, the lead paramedic came out and he just said, hey, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but she's gone, and she's been gone for a while. There's just nothing. There's nothing we can do. And so at that point, I remember falling on my face on the kitchen floor right outside the room and just sobbing, absolutely sobbing, just in despair. And that was the experience. I think going from those traumatic events where I think the one thing that I've thought about over and over was going from 11 p.m. the previous night, kissing each other, having a great night, just being so happy, to 8 hours later, she's gone. It was just such a drastic turn of events that I was not ready for it. I absolutely was not ready for that. Just polar opposite turn of events. So a very heavy morning. And so I went upstairs. They have to do an investigation. About 2 hours later, I'm surrounded by my family at that point. I think that was a blessing in disguise as well. I have my brothers, my parents around me, my sister, all of her family just surrounding me and the boys. I'm trying to hold it together. And I'm losing it. I'm losing it in front of everyone. It was just a heaviness and a despair that I could not handle at that point. And then I think to kind of cap the morning off, in closing, the main investigator came up and he said, we just finished our due diligence downstairs, and he just said she went peacefully. And he said, I've seen multiple deaths. I've done this for 20 years, and I can just say that she went very peacefully. And that did give me comfort, although I was in utter agony and hell. That fact alone, that she went peacefully, gave me some peace. I asked that I could go see her, so I went down, and I just remember going down, vividly remember this, going down and just laying next to her and just sobbing and holding her and telling her that I loved her with all my heart. And then I obviously never gone through that experience before, but them at that point then taking her out of the house, and then you're just left alone, and then you're just sitting there looking into an unknown future at that point.
Damn, dude.
It was the heaviest and absolute worst day of our lives, by far.
I'm sure you've heard this 100 times. And it probably doesn't, these words may not mean anything to you, but I just want to say I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's, I'm emotional, obviously, because your story, but it's hard not to visualize when you tell that story, what it would be like for me to go through that. So I'm visualizing my children behind me. I'm visualizing my 3-year-old laying next to me, and my wife, and yeah, man, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
How did that change you? How are you different today than you were a year and 10 days ago?
I'm different in every single way. And I being very frank and very straightforward. I'm good at putting forth it's the best word I can say is just a front. I was a football coach, and so you have to be a good recruiter. I'm used to leading people. So when you're leading a group of people, you can't walk up and let them know that you're having a bad day. So I'm used to putting on a strong face and a strong front. But this has absolutely destroyed me. It has broken me to the point where I am humbled to the absolute dust. I just wrote a family email to, we have a thread with my in-laws and her family, my wife's family. And at the year mark, we just passed the year mark, I just wrote down my thoughts of the past year. And I went through kind of a little, just a quick story of our marriage. We started out, I loved her. We loved each other. We were deeply in love, but you have to figure each other out. Then we move away from Utah and we're in coaching and we have our first boy. We have our first baby. And at that point I fall head over heels for her. And this is 4 years into our marriage. Then we go to our next coaching opportunity. We have our second boy. At that point, I remember just feeling absolutely smitten by her. Then we go to our other coaching job 2 or 3 years later. And at that point, I am not only head over heels, not only smitten by her, but I remember vividly thinking at that point, man, I just feel at one with this woman. We are one person. And so then fast forward 5-6 years and she passes away. At the first time in a very, very long time, I don't feel at one with someone anymore. She's physically gone. I'm desperately trying to hold on to any resemblance of her. I'm trying to connect with her daily, but I feel like an absolute shell of myself every single day. And it's not, hey, let's wake up and yeah, I kind of miss her, but we can kind of go on throughout the day. This is every second of every single day. I am looking for myself. I just feel like a shell of myself. I'm not complete. I'm deeply, deeply longing for her, and I'm absolutely broken. And obviously it's still raw. It's only been a year and I am still 100% broken, brokenhearted in every single way. And that's despite what I put forth on social media and what I go into work every day and I still lead a team of people and I got to put on a strong face, but deep down it is completely changed. It's rewired who I am. And I still think I have a lot of work to do to try to find myself. But it's something that has absolutely humbled me to the dust.
I don't want to compare my story at all because it's not the same at all. And I don't want to, I hope you don't take this as that at
Absolutely
all.
Not.
But
No.
it's my experience. I got a text message. I was on an airplane. I was basically in New York City when I heard my wife was going to the hospital. She had a complicated pregnancy issue. Plane's descending. I get a text from my father-in-law that says something to the effect of, brace yourself, she's not going to make it. And when I read that, in my heart, she was gone. I felt like he just wasn't telling me. He wanted to wait till I got to the hospital to embrace me and be there for me and that sort of thing. And so I lived about 2 hours of my life thinking that my wife had passed away. And it's like so hard to describe the inability to gather your thoughts. I describe it as like your whole life kind of flashes before your eyes. Everything comes to the forefront from when you were a child. You have all these memories just flipping through. And I went through similar stages of grief, and I can only imagine, like, that was only 2 hours.
Yeah.
You've lived with this for a year. Has it gotten easier with time?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you have a gift now too of you kind of know how that is. You thought that she was gone for 2 hours. So I really appreciate you sharing that. To me, it has not gotten easier with time. I think it will. I have hope. I really do. I don't want this to be a total downer. I know it's going to get better, but for me, it has not gotten better at the year point. The first 6 months, you're numb. You are absolutely numb. And I was shocked. I just could not, my mind could not comprehend. There was so much muscle memory, and there still is today, about, I need to text Emily. I need to call Emily. I can't even tell you how many times I would say I'd be in my house and say, hey babe. And I'd stop myself, cause I'm thinking about, calling her. Then you kind of cross that 6-month mark, and then we moved out of Utah. I felt like I had to get out of Utah. And then you start kind of looking at your future prospects of life and your future with these boys, and she's not coming back. And she's just, your mind is just trying to grasp what is going on every single day. And it's so different. You're trying to recognize who you are. You're trying to grasp onto any comfort, any dopamine hit you can. And then you start realizing that, crap, she is not coming back. And you start looking at your life. When I was married to Emily, or when she was here on this earth, I should say, I remember I was thinking life was going on really fast. I was like, man, I'm already 37. Life's moving. And now, since she's been gone, it is like I'm fighting every minute just to get through the day. It's gone so extremely slow. I was on the phone with my mom just before I came over here and just saying, man, it just seems like my life is going to be 1,000 years without the prospect of having her by my side. Every single second of every day, you're just one. And so to me, that prospect of just accepting that you're not going to have her the rest of your life on this earth is very, very uncomfortable for me. And it's still something that I need to accept. And I'm sure that's going to take some time. But I do, I want to be clear. I do have hope, and I do have faith that eventually somehow we're going to understand, maybe why this happened. We're going to become stronger because of it. And I think I'm hoping that we're going to be able to function normally again.
Have you had any experiences since you lost her where you felt her presence in your life?
I've got that question so many times, and it's, these are deeply personal thoughts, but I remember at her funeral, I had this overwhelming sense of confidence. And I remember thinking, it's okay, because I'm going to be able to see her all the time. I'm going to pray, or I'm just going to start talking to her, and she's going to show up maybe in a dream. I know the listeners may think that's kind of crazy, but when you're at that point, you're trying anything to just grasp onto her. So I was like, I'm going to see her in dreams. I'll be able to talk to her. It's going to be fine. Little did I know that she didn't show up, and I haven't felt her. I have not seen her in a dream. It's scary. I mean, it's like you literally lost your spouse. I mean, physically, emotionally, mentally, she's gone. Yeah. Now, about 2 months ago, I will say I'm sitting on the couch watching my 3 boys play, and these boys are my everything. I mean, they're my link to her, and I just am so grateful for them. But I'm watching them play, and I'm looking at my little 4-year-old's face, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I see my wife in his face. I look at his mouth. It's the exact same mouth, same little nose, same laugh. And then I see, as time goes on, a couple weeks later, I'm looking at my 10-year-old, and I'm looking at how he's reacting to a certain situation. I'm like, whoa, that is your mom. That's my wife, how she would react. I'm looking at my 7-year-old's laugh, and just how he is doing this silent laugh, and he's just totally cracking up, and he can't control himself. I'm like, that's your mom's laugh. And so that I had a realization that, right now up to this point, although I haven't seen her in a dream, I haven't heard her voice, I haven't talked to her, I literally felt her through those boys. Yeah. And that to me was just amazing. I was so grateful. Now it's a double-edged sword, because then you're you become almost obsessive about your boys, and you're like, you're not wanting anything bad to happen to them either, you know, because you're like, oh my gosh, like my link to her is through them.
Yeah.
I love my boys. And my 10-year-old went on a field trip today, and I'm calling my mom and trying to find out where they're going and if they're okay. And so I think there's some trauma associated with that connection as well, but it's a pretty special relationship. And I think that's the connection and the link that I have to my wife is through them at this point.
One of the things you talked about was how supportive she was with your profession, you know, and I heard you say on another podcast that you weren't making a lot of money when you got that pay raise. It was still not a lot of money.
Pretty bad.
It's interesting though, as I've had more success in my career and made more and more money, it's become very clear to me that more money does not mean more happiness. And I know it sounds cliche and people talk about this all the time, but it's true. And it took that experience that I went through last year to really shock the system and change my perspective on life. Realize that the relationships are the thing, number one, in my opinion. And the depth and the meaning of those relationships and how you treat them and how you manage them and how you take care of them and nurture them. And do you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I love what you said about that. And it is cliche, but it is so true. And I think we hear it so many times that it becomes almost mundane that we forget about it. But I think it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And I've thought about this a lot. I think relationships are hard to create because you have to be selfless. You have to love people, and you have to say inside when you're talking to someone, you have to say, okay, I'm going to suspend all my thoughts right now. I'm actually going to look this person in the eye, and I'm going to listen to what they're saying. And then it's reciprocated. And I think you start showing respect, and you just build positive relationships. How many times I always used to talk to my players, or I talk to my staff now in my current profession think about when you're in a conversation with someone and you know they're not listening to you, or they're just thinking about something else, or they interrupt you and they tell you what they experienced, or you can kind of feel that, okay, this person's not really with me. They're not really listening to me. I think in order to have relationships, you have to care about the other person. You have to listen to them. And that's what my wife did. And that's what we did in our marriage. We were so different. We were polar opposites with how we grew up, with how we just handled certain situations, but we worked really well. And I just knew every second of my marriage, even if I was doing something stupid, I knew that she loved me unconditionally, and vice versa. And I look at the close circle that I have right now, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You have that respect. You have that common desire just to love other people. And it's rare. I think it's very rare to have those certain relationships. My wife and I, the most we ever made, I think I said this on Jimmy's podcast, the most we ever made in coaching was $60,000 in a year. And I remember when we got that, they got that offer, we were jumping for joy. We were like, oh my gosh, we are freaking reeling it in, man. Because at that point we had gone to a place where we made $40,000 a year. I coached at a Division I school in Utah. I was making $45,000 a year, but we loved it. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world. And we still spent a ton of time together. We would go explore. We would go hang out. I look at those memories, and I long for those memories when you're dirt poor, but I would give anything to go back to those memories and to those times when that's all that mattered, was the relationships and the trust and the love that is built. And like I said before, it didn't come year one. It came probably year 8 or 9 of our marriage, where I was like, man, I feel like one person with this woman.
Yeah.
And that was, despite the money we made nothing. And so I agree with you 100% that it's the fulfilling thing in life is those relationships.
Yeah, having more money, more things just comes with a lot more responsibilities and headaches and problems. And it's yeah, I think some of the happiest moments in our marriage was when we were newly married and paying $600 a month for rent in our town, in our condo down the street here in Orem.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
You know, because like date nights, we'd get creative. We'd go to the park. We'd have a picnic, and it was just pure. Very connected, you know, every experience we had together. So
very pure.
Yeah.
I am making more money now, and it feels, I've never felt less fulfilled, honestly. And there were times in our later stage of marriage where we were switching careers, and we were both like, hey, we're excited to make some more money. And there was the goal of making money, because we had never made money at that point.
Yeah.
Since she's gone now, it's like, what's
it all for? Yeah.
This is cool, but yeah, it is not fulfilling.
I want to talk about an idea that's also, I think, really cliche, but you would understand this concept better than anybody, which is, so prior to what we went through last year, I don't know if you struggle with this at all, but I could be in the room with my kids, but I was rarely present. I was really there, fully connected. I could be in the room with my wife. I was rarely there, fully present. Yeah. And one of the main shifts that this had for me was just grounding me. And now every interaction I have, I'm fully there, 100%. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm never living in the past. I'm never living in the future. I'm just here in the present. And it required an experience of, don't take any of these moments for granted, because you never know when it's going to be your last one. Yeah. Right? Like what is that? What sort of meaning does that have to you now? And how do you live every moment as if it might be your last? Yeah.
I think you're inspired. Or maybe we just have, you know, maybe we're very similar in that aspect, but that's everything to me. And can't tell you how many hours I've thought about that concept of being present. That was something that I really struggled with in coaching, and with college football coaching, that is a 100% all in. And I'm sure every profession is, but this one was like a week to week. Your ass is on the chopping block week to week. As you know, playing sports, you know, as a coach, if you lose a game, I mean, you're on the hot seat. And so you couldn't take any time off. Mentally, physically, you were just present within that sport. And I struggled with that a lot. So I tried to break the mold a little bit. And for the majority of my career, we won games. And so when you're winning games, you can get away with a lot. And so I will say that I tried my absolute best to not grind, because a lot of the times I felt like it was useless. I felt like you were running on empty, and I think you were just kind of doing it to show that you were spending hours in the office when you really didn't need to. I feel like I would be all in, you know, in the office, but then I would try to get out of there as soon as possible to go be with my kids and be present. I feel like the last couple of years we started losing some games, and I think those, you know, if you're not in the office when you're losing games, it's not a good combination. And so I think a lot more time had to be spent in the office, and it was just time. It was time to get out of that profession and go to something else. So I do have that experience where there was a lot of angst to that. I'm like, gosh, man, my boys are in that age. They're 2 to 10. Okay. Once they hit 10, then there's 8 more years and they're 18. Like that, it's a very short window. And so I would be kicking myself if I was spending all my time, either mentally, emotionally, physically, if I'm spending all my time on something else other than my kids. I worked with a coach. He's a veteran coach. He's one of my biggest mentors. And he described an experience when he was coaching in a Pac-12 school.
Who is it?
Mark Weber. He was a coach for them at BYU. He's awesome. He's actually the offensive line coach right now at Idaho State. Just a phenomenal human being and a phenomenal coach. He talked about an experience where he coached at UCLA, And he said he had to sleep in his office because the traffic took 2 hours to get home. So he said he just never saw his kids when he was at UCLA. And at the end of the season, he was saying, man, I'm looking back, and I think we had gone like, 5-7 or something, or 4-8 or whatever. And it's like, you just missed an entire chunk of your family's life all to go 5-7, right? And then a season that no one will remember, And so that, to me, that wasn't worth it. I loved the game with all my heart. I loved it. And I loved the relationships with the players. I loved the relationships with the coaches that you could make. I loved recruiting, but it wasn't worth it to sell my soul to that profession. And it just, unfortunately, I think it's rare to be able to just have that balance in that profession. And so it was just time. It was time. And so I love that you brought that up, just the being present. I think I try to put down my phone. I try to turn off the TV. I try to just stare at my kids and listen to their crazy stories about how they played some weird Halo game at recess, because it means everything to them. And I think they're so observant. They know when you're glancing at your phone while they're telling a story. I mean, I think they see that stuff. Yeah. At least my kids do. So
what are some of the most challenging things about being a single father now, but what are also some of the beautiful things or the opportunities of being a single father?
Yeah. I think just the tangible things that you can, that I haven't ever been too worried about it, but they are hard. It's just the different roles that you have to play now. My wife was an incredible homemaker. She was incredible, and she would laugh about this, but she graduated from BYU in home and family living. And I always was like, babe, give yourself some credit. That's a sweet major. But she would always just kind of laugh and be like, it's funny. And then other people that weren't BYU affiliated, they'd be like, whoa, that's a major.
That's a thing. Yeah.
That's crazy. But she loved every bit of being that homemaker. And she just was so freaking good at it, man. She just took care of the house. Every aspect of the house was taken care of. There was just a spirit in our home. And that's a cliche thing in our, in this community, but there was just an amazing energy and an amazing spirit in our home. And I didn't have those roles. I didn't have those home roles. I was able to play the good cop where I went and made money, and then I came home and, I wasn't changing the diapers at all. And so they could come and jump in my arms, and it was like, here's fun, Dad. Yeah. And now I'm the one having to clean the kitchen and clean up after them. And, there was obviously throughout our marriage, I'm helping out as much as possible, but you don't do it like a woman. I mean, those women who have that spirit in them, it is phenomenal. And it's the most important job by far that you can do, is just taking care of that home and raising those children. It is amazing. And so I think I brought up earlier that I feel like a shell of myself. You do. You just feel very, very inadequate. I've never felt inadequate in my life. I'm a confident person. But I have lost confidence. I feel inadequate. I feel like don't know what I'm doing. I'm getting a ton of support and a ton of help. And so there is, that element. And then on top of that, those day-to-day operations, I'm dealing with, the depression of losing my spouse of 14 years. And so you're in this fog, you're in this thick, dark fog. And you're just becoming disassociated and disconnected with almost the trauma of what you've experienced. And so I've felt myself kind of just disconnecting a little bit, and I gotta prevent against that. I got kids, and you have responsibilities. And so that's a battle every day to just be present and to not fall away in the, just the worries and the depression, of not having your spouse there. You got a job to do. And so that's a battle every day. I think the beautiful thing is, what I mentioned earlier, it's me and my boys. And I think that's a part of why we moved out of Utah. It's a blessing and a curse to have so much family here. They are the most amazing human beings that I know, and they love us and they will do anything for us. But when my wife died, it was the first time that I felt a little bit disconnected from not only her, but from my boys, because everyone was taking my boys everywhere. And then it became me in a room by myself thinking and crying. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. This is not sustainable. So being out in California where we are now, it's me and my boys, and we have our brother out. I have my brothers out there. I have 2 brothers out there. But it's me and them. It's me and the boys. I can connect with them daily. And then I have really just come to grips with this the last couple months. I can feel my wife and I can be connected with her with my boys and how I treat these boys and how I raise these boys. Everything we're doing, if I'm getting after my little kids, I'm like, hey, what would mom do? Like, would mom be proud of you for doing that? And they're like, no. And so I can feel connected with her. And I'm, like I said, the past couple months, I've really felt connected with her by taking that approach through those little boys.
One thing I think a lot about is how to be a good father. Probably I think about this more than anything in business, or it's definitely number one on my mind, especially as the kids get older. My oldest is turning 8 and 6 and 3, and we have a 3-week-old.
Love it.
I think parenting is the hardest job in the world, that comes also with the greatest potential consequences if you don't do a good job as a parent. And I put a lot of pressure on myself because of that. I don't know if it's healthy pressure or not, but I think parents that care deeply tend to set their children up for better success than parents that don't.
Absolutely.
But I think there's a fine balance of also letting your children figure things out and fail too. But that's part of the strategy of being a father in my mind. So I have this list of non-negotiables that I do with my kids. Do you have any of those? Like, what are your like, you have to obey these small set of rules no matter what? Like, what are those for your boys?
Yeah, I love that. And I think goes back to what I was saying, where I'm always asking them, it starts with me. I'm always saying, okay, what would Emily do in this situation? Right? Like, how would she react to this situation? Then I'm always saying that to my boys. But one of the non-negotiables that I learned through my wife, going back to what I was telling you about me and my brothers, we had a good spirit in our home growing up. We had amazing parents, but it was different, man. It was 4 alpha male boys. And then we had a little sister, but we fought. I mean, it was competitive. There was some tension. We had an amazing spirit in our home. We're all married with great families now, but I learned real peace and real harmony through my wife and how she treated me and how she reacted to certain situations. And so there have been times since she's passed away that I've lost my temper on my boys, and you kind of raise your voice or yell at them, and then 2 seconds later you're like, oh crap. But I think the non-negotiable for me, and they know this, is to love each other. And my wife had this incredible ability to love and to care about other people. She was the most, and this is just from my reference point, obviously, but she was the most selfless human being that I've ever known. And if there's ever any fighting or and they're going to fight, my boys are going to fight. But if there's a bad spirit that is brought in our home, my boys know that that's not how we do it. My wife never tried to change me. We grew up very differently. We did things differently. Our operations were differently, but she never tried to change me once. And I always felt like she was like the North Star, and I was kind of always trying to find my way. But she never nagged me once. She would never say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? She would always just look at me in the eyes and just hug me and love me. We would have great conversations. But that motivated me. I was like, oh man, you know what? I probably shouldn't be doing that. I know that kind of probably doesn't jive with her standards. And so she just had this ability to love me and get me on track, without being nagging or without being forceful or without being condescending or judgmental. See, she certainly had a backbone. She didn't get run over, but those are non-negotiables for me, is to love these boys the best as possible. And that's what you mentioned earlier. It's being present with them, because they know when you're not present. It's listening to them. It's loving them every day. I mean, I think that's rubbed off on them through me and my wife. I think they know what the standard in that home is, and I think that goes a long way.
I want to ask you about your hat.
Yeah.
I love this hat, but I don't know the context. But is there any context, or do you just like it?
I love this hat. Number one, I love how it fits. But this is a golf company, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I've bought several of their things because I love it. Good. And I've used that term several times since my wife has passed, and she was just. I first heard this when I was getting engaged to my wife. Her dad sat me down. We had broken up several times in our courtship, and finally we got engaged, and we were going to go through with it. And
usually those don't last, man.
I know. Then the reasons why we broke up were stupid. It was just we were young, and that's how we do it in our culture. We get married young. But I remember her dad sitting me down when we finally decided to go through with this. And I always knew that I was going to marry her. I loved her with all my heart. But I remember him sitting me down, and he just said, Emily is full of goodness. She is full of light and goodness. And it's really taken, and I totally knew that throughout our marriage, but it really has taken her passing to really internalize what that means. And I hate to say this, but I think it's rare in our world. But it's there. I think there's people that are just genuinely good, and you can feel it. And so what I've strived to do is to try to fill my life with goodness. And I think the best mark that I noticed with my wife being gone is every person that talked to me at her funeral or has reached out to me on a personal phone call or message, they've said, I didn't even know her, but she would walk into a room, and I could just tell that she was full of goodness and she was full of light. And that just makes such an impact on people. It makes an impact on kids. It makes an impact on people that you meet. And even if you don't know them, I remember people that I would complain about my wife to that annoyed me. And she would just look at me and kind of smile and laugh. And then she would say something positive. And she wasn't this fake rah-rah person. It was just genuine goodness that just resonated. And so I love it. I saw it, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to fill my hats and my clothing with that brand. I think it's an awesome
It's
logo.
legit. I want one. Maybe we'll find the hat. We'll link to it.
I love it.
Maybe we'll do a deal with them or something.
That's sweet. I love it.
So our audience is very diverse. And so I want to ask you the question. I think I probably have an assumption of your beliefs, but do you believe that you'll see Emily again?
I do. It's just being vulnerable and open. It's much harder. Or I should say it's much easier to tout that when they're present.
When they're here.
And then they leave, and you're like,
I sure hope
crap.
so.
Yeah. You're like, wow, I'm not just saying this. This is not just lip service. And I think it's just because they're not here physically, mentally, they're gone. And so would I like to see her in dreams and just have the ability to see her? Yes, absolutely. I long for that, man. It's a pain that I can't describe. So it is hard, very, very hard to visualize seeing her again. It's only been a year. It seems like 20 years since I've seen her. The longest we've ever been apart was 4 weeks in our marriage. She went on a dancing trip with BYU early in our marriage for 4 weeks. And now we just passed a year. And so it's indescribable not being with her physically. And so, yeah, it is harder to internalize seeing her again, but I do have faith and I do have hope that I will see her again. And I think with time, maybe that internalization will grow and become more of a reality, but it's hard to grasp, and it's hard to just conceptualize that at this point.
Yeah. I want to wrap with this. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling right now. They're going through all sorts of different things and trials and traumas and to varying degrees, but everybody's trauma is the worst trauma, right? In their mind. What do you say to people that are dealing with trauma and really tough things? Do you have any advice for how you've dealt with it and advice for them to cope and heal?
Yeah, it's an amazing question. And trauma, now that I've experienced it, I remember, and hopefully this will resonate with some people, I remember about a week before she passed away, I was driving home from work. I'm in Northern California, driving home. I have about a 20-minute commute. And I remember thinking in my head, and, you know, who knows if it's, I don't believe in this, but it's like, did I jinx it or what? But I remember thinking, holy crap, like my life is amazing right now. Like I'm happy. I haven't really had any trials with health. I haven't had any trials, you know, with I've lost a couple grandparents, but I remember going to my grandpa's funeral, and me and my grandpa were super, super close, but he was in his late 80s, and it's different. And so I remember driving home thinking, man, my life is very easy. And then a week later she passes away. And so I think not if, but when it happens to people, I'm talking about trauma or traumatic events. I think there's hope. And right now I will just be very honest. I have felt a despair and a lack of hope that I've never felt before in my entire life. And that's a feeling that I don't wish upon anyone, but it does get better. And it's the most cliche thing in the world, but I live minute to minute. And I just keep going because I just have a feeling that there's going to be light at the end of this tunnel. And if you have to live minute to minute, then just do it. And I will say this too, that I've kind of always taken on this approach, but I've had to do it more so. Life shouldn't be taken that seriously in the aspect of worldly things. And I think you've kind of alluded to it earlier. We worry about so many things that are just so meaningless. And I don't think those things need to be worried about. I think we need to be very competent and try to be the best we can at what we do with our crafts. But if we are neglecting any ounce of our personal lives, whether it be relationships or family members or personal health, physical health, mental health, emotional health, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And I think we just get so distracted so easily. And it's not worth it to do that. And so I've made a vow, and I really took this approach throughout my marriage, but now since my wife has passed, it is just on the forefront of my mind. I will never let anything take precedent over my relationships and my well-being. It is not worth it. And if people want to leave you, and if they say, nah, he's not really all in, then so be it. Because I'm not gonna do that.
Well said, man. Thank you for coming on,
man,
and joining. Your story really touched me, and I think is going to touch a lot of people. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and opening up.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a pleasure. Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining another episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. It was a pleasure to have Kelly Bills on the show today, and what a touching story that Kelly shared. There's 3 main takeaways that I want to share from the podcast. Number 1, live every day like it could be your last. He's a testament of that. And I think being present and finding a way to be present, not living in the past, living in the future, is an unlock to more fulfillment, more purpose in your life. Number 2, fill your life with goodness. I love the conversation that we had about the hat and just being good, being a good human, spending time with other good people, and being filled with goodness. And then number 3, life is too short to take it too seriously. I think it's okay to loosen up every once in a while. Don't take yourself or others too seriously. Be confident with who you are. Don't take what others say about you personally. I think these are key attributes to having a happy and fulfilled life. Thanks again for jumping on the roller coaster with us. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.